In today's podcast episode with Gary Lezak, we are breaking down the LRC and the weather cycle. What is happening in the world of the weather right now? For all of you listeners out there, if this is your first time listening to one of Gary's episodes, he has this amazing product that he created called Weather 2020. And it is a whole product based around the LRC, which is the Lezak Recurring Cycle. Gary and I have been discussing this cycle every single week for weeks on end. Gary has been with us almost since the beginning of this podcast, guys. And so right now, the LRC is in the midst of setting up for this next year. And so in today's podcast episode, we're not going to sit here and tell you what's going to happen throughout all of winter because we don't have an accurate prediction of that yet. But what Gary is going to do is kind of explain what's happening in the weather right now, in the cycles right now, some key indicators that he's seeing with that, and how it's going to affect all of our farmers and ranchers out there as we look out into the next year worth of weather. Before we hop into this episode, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you are watching on any of our podcast platforms, take a second to make sure you are following the show and go rate and review it as well. Thank you for listening to another episode, and let's go ahead and hear from Gary. Gary, welcome back to the podcast. How is life in beautiful Colorado? Have you had your freeze yet? Have you guys had any snow? How's the dogs? How's everything?
We've had a freeze, but we have not had snow. It's not even close. Even down to 1,000 feet, it is yet to snow. And even up in the mountains, it's barely snowed. So it has been a very slow start to winter here for the ski areas. And that continues to this day and for another week, maybe.
Wow, that is crazy. Let's talk about, you just showed me a super cute video of the dogs posing it up for the Aurora Borealis last night.
Yes.
What's going on with that? Tell us all about it.
The northern lights of the Aurora Borealis, it's like a solar storm. It's called a coronal mass ejection. That's what it's called, for real. So there was a coronal mass ejection on the sun, and this solar energy and flare spreads out and is over our sky. So on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, if you were looking, you might have seen the northern lights. I, for the first time ever, saw them. Never seen them before. And it was rather spectacular. So yeah, I got the dogs to pose. You can go to my Facebook, my Gary Lezak fan page, and check that out. But yeah, that was exciting. That has no impact on our weather whatsoever. But it's certainly an interesting event. And tonight, when we're recording this on a Wednesday, tonight it does look like it's going to be happening again. So it's going to be exciting.
Yes, very much so. Well, what is happening in the weather pattern right now? We're still in the midst of the LRC setting up. You just sent out your weather report yesterday. What kind of did you talk about in there, and what are we seeing so far in the weather pattern setting up right now, Gary?
Well, I started by saying that the roulette wheel of weather continues to spin and the ball is slowing down. It's about to drop into a slot. In Nebraska, is it going to drop into the drought spot, or is it going to go into the cold and snowy slot, or the rainy and cool slot, or the sunny and dry slot? Which slot is it going to land in Nebraska? Which slot is it going to land in Kansas? Which slot at your farm in Missouri or Iowa? How about eastern Colorado, western Kansas? Where will the ball drop? So the part of the pattern that just moved through, produced the cold outbreak and the lake effect snow through the Great Lakes, that part of the pattern is going to return. All right. So, but when? Right now, I got a sneaking suspicion it could be close to a 2-month cycle this year, close to that. So 60-ish days, maybe. Could be any cycle length, though. I'm not sure yet. It's usually December when we can really identify what that is. But when the Arctic blast comes in January, don't be surprised. We will be talking about how, remember back in November when that lake effect snow happened, the same part of the pattern is cycling through again. That's the first thing I talked about in the report that you can access for a discount through CattleUSA, and Lauren will tell you that the links are down below. You can have the model itself that is now projected to go out a year ahead that includes growing degree days and everything. But right now, in the first part of this weather pattern, It has been below average on precipitation across much of the eastern half of Colorado, all of Nebraska, Iowa, most of Minnesota, southeast South Dakota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, and Kansas. There's a little sliver near average rainfall over Manhattan, Kansas, down to Wichita, but otherwise it has been fairly dry. Compare that to a year ago. A year ago, it was wet over central and western Kansas at this time of the year. In November, it was pretty wet. And then there was a huge bullseye of heavy precipitation over Texas and New Mexico, and that is likely directly related to the biggest disaster of the year, the big flooding disaster near Kerr Valley there in Texas. 135 people killed. But anyway, that's last year. And another thing, Lauren, it's above average on temperatures, to much above average on temperatures from Texas, Colorado, across Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, and Missouri. So even in the Great Lakes where it just had the lake effect snow and a cold spell, it's a little bit above average there too. It's still a warmer than average pattern that is setting up. And what happens is the weather pattern is cycling according to the LRC. The LRC was named after me back in the early 2000s when we started making accurate long-range predictions. And the LRC is the biggest piece of the atmospheric jigsaw. There are other things like the PDO, the AO, the NAO, and we'll talk about those in just a second. But basically, the pattern is evolving, setting up, and it is a fascinating one. And we're trying to figure out what it means for planting, growing, and harvest seasons coming up soon. So we will have that figured out by December. Our model is going to project all the way through that. Right now, on the report I published yesterday, you can see the growing degree day forecast all the way through April for the broad area, but we'll tighten that up a little bit. But it is fascinating to watch unfold. Other forecasters, Lauren, so I don't want to call out any names, but just the big companies to individual forecasters that now have a huge following on social media. You know, I'm jealous of some of these followings some of these young kids now have with 3 million YouTube followers. One way I could do that if I want to, I could start covering tornadoes and I would get a huge following. But I don't want to spend my day covering tornadoes all day long, okay? But it allows, if you're good at it, you'll get a huge following because there's a value and there's a very important task of bringing good weather information to people. But these other forecasters, including those influencers, they react, okay? They are reactive. And I put this in my report that I published yesterday. Those forecasts are reactive. So in other words, if 15 days from now, an Arctic blast shows up on the computer models, and those models go out about 15 days with just a little bit of accuracy, not even that accurate, those other forecasts will react and say, sudden stratospheric warming is taking place in the next 15 days, and it's going to lead to an Arctic blast, because that's what they saw on a computer model. They reacted to the computer model, or they react to something else they hear or see. That's the big difference. What we're bringing to you here is not reacting to what a model shows in 15 days. Oh, I might say, oh my gosh, look at that. It's showing a big snowstorm for Christmas. That's me reacting. But then I'll say, and look, that's the storm we have been predicting for 45 days already. So there's a difference there. The others react to what a model says, and we, I guess, are proactive instead of reactive, and we are telling you what is likely going to happen. The Weather 2020 is creating this roadmap, this blueprint of the weather pattern. And I hate to say, here we are in this conversation week after week. It is mid-November now, and I'm still telling you I need to learn more. We need just 2 or 3 more weeks. By early December, I'm going to issue a winter forecast that I will share with you guys, and we will start having high confidence in what's going to happen. It's just that right now we still have to see how this first cycle sets up. That's what our patent pending is. We have a patent pending on weather prediction using weather cycles. No one does it the way we do it. And that reactive one I was talking about earlier, that same person said, this lines up with 8 other past years. Okay. It might line up with 8 other past years, but guess what's going to happen in 2025, 2026? It will be the 2025, 2026 version of the pattern and not like those other years. Maybe there's some similarities. There are similarities. There's similarities. It's going to turn cold this winter. That's the similarity. It's going to get hot next summer. That's the similarity. Sometimes people blast me. Oh boy, Gary's predicting a heat wave July 10th to 18th. Oh my goodness, that's hard. It's going to get hot in July. No, I'm predicting a heat wave July 10th to 18th, not July 19th to 26th. There's a difference. Anyway, I'm on a long tangent and rant without you having any response. What do you think of all that?
No, Gary, you are completely fine on that. But I loved what you said about the proactive aspect instead of being reactive. I think that you look across multiple industries and multiple different sectors, and you can look at that as a common theme in a lot of our lives is something happens and we react to it rather than sitting in a scenario and saying, how can I be proactive in this scenario, in this situation? And weather, I think, especially for farmers and ranchers for so long has been one of those things that's like, I'll look at the long-term weather predictive things. I'll look at the 30-day forecast, the 15-day forecast. Like it gets kind of accurate as you get closer, but I can't really tell when I need to be looking at like getting more help for calving because we're going to have a snowstorm coming. Rather than doing that 2 weeks in advance, being able to do that a month, 2 months, 3 months in advance of, hey, maybe not the exact dates, but like plus or minus 1 or 2 days. This is what's going to happen around this time. And I think that that is so empowering to so many people because it allows us to get in that proactive stance rather than a reactive stance. And I mean, there's all the jokes and all the memes about weathermen out there and how all they're doing is just telling you what's happening in the sky outside that day and that, you know, they probably can't tell you what's happening tomorrow. Like all of those jokes that, you know, Gary, in your many years of experience have probably heard them all, but this is completely different than the norm, right? And it's kind of going against the grain of what we know weather and weather prediction to be.
Right. And when it comes to long range predictions, I saw this one winter forecast that, remember, anything that comes out before mid to late November is not including the most important piece of the puzzle, the LRC. And so they come up with these forecasts. And by the way, this whole 20-minute video I watched of one of these winter forecasts yesterday, what did it end up saying? Basically, it said it's going to be a little bit below average on snow and near average on temperatures. Oh boy, that was a 20-minute forecast to tell me something that really doesn't help you. What Weather 2020 does, we'll be able to show you on our dashboard week by week what's going to happen. Week by week from December all the way through next September. And then you can look at that. When you learn how to use this tool, you can start planning for, hey, it looks like the 3 weeks between February 25th and March 15th looks dry, but the 3 weeks between March 15th and April 1st looks wet. We might want to get our planting in before that. And so you can start planning beforehand. And then when it actually is accurate, you've got the plan in place and you're ready to go. You're not reacting to the weather. And so that's how it works. Is it 100% accurate? Of course not. It is not. I wish it was. And I want it to be 100% accurate, but it is just not. I mean, 100% accurate is ridiculous. With tornado outbreaks, it's 90% accurate. We are predicting severe weather outbreaks months in advance, down to a day or two right on, or a day or two off, possibly 3 months, 4 months in advance, at a 90% clip. Winter storms predicted 90% clip a month or two out, and we'll have those for you soon. But when it comes to every day's weather, our accuracy is not going to be that high. It's going to be 50%, 40%. That sounds bad, but if you know at 15 days, when somebody tells you there's going to be a winter storm in 15 days, the next day you'll say, is that winter storm showing up? They'll say, no, it is not. It's not there anymore. It's not, those are 25% accurate. So we're twice as accurate as some of those other ones. Anyway, that's the difference. And the next 3 weeks, we're going to learn so much more about this pattern. And right now, as we speak, there is a series of storm systems coming into California. California is going to get bomb blasted. Is that a word?
It is now.
They're going to get hit hard by a very wet storm system. And by the way, that other forecaster said Southern California is going to be dry all winter. You count, I guess you don't count this for winter, do you? But it's going to return. But Southern California, Central California, they're going to get blasted by the storm system, flooding. It's going to happen Friday and Saturday. There could be 6, 7, 8 inches of rain, which is extremely unusual for that. But the storm's setting up. And it's related to one from about a month ago that they had. So I think that's a half cycle. That's why I told you it could be a 60-day cycle. That's top secret, by the way, if you know what that means. And so, but that storm's coming in, and then that's a storm that's going to head towards Colorado. The Kansas City Chiefs play Denver on Sunday in a must-win situation. I believe it's a must-win. The Chiefs have got to beat the Denver Broncos. So I named this week Stop the Broncos Week, and I live in Denver, so people probably hate me. The Chiefs have to win this game Sunday, and they may not. You know how football games go. If they don't, they're in trouble of not making the playoffs seriously. So, and if they don't, they don't. But I think that there's a lot on the line. Let's hope that they can show up. But the weather, that storm that comes into California is heading this way, and it doesn't get here until Sunday night or Monday, so that means it'll be an absolutely gorgeous day for that game here.
Yes, I am so excited to see this weather pattern set up and be able to go back to like, hey, what's happening in 3 months, Gary? And being able to break all of that down with like crazy accuracy. Because Gary, you've been with this podcast pretty much since the beginning and doing episodes every week with us. And this has been something that over the past, Gary, this episode is episode number 200 that is going to come out.
No way.
Episode number 200. And so over the past however many weeks, almost a year that we've been doing this podcast, it has been really cool to be able to sit back and say like, okay, in April, we talked about this. We talked about this 3-month forecast. And then 3 months later, we were talking about that. And in the moment, do I always like sit there and I'm like, oh, we talked about that 3 months ago? No. But like looking back and being super reflective, it's like we've been talking about this stuff and it's really cool to be able to get into that groove. And so I'm really excited to see this weather pattern set up
and
just be able to talk about your brainchild.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we talk about in our weather2020.substack.com report, that Weather 2020 Intelligence Report, is just that. Like we timestamp, since we do these updates also every week, sometimes twice a week. That storm that hit California October 3rd, I can go back a month ago and say, wait a second, here's what we said. This is going to return. It'll be interesting when this returns. It'll be a hint at what the cycle length is. And here it is. Boom. 30 days later, they're getting hit again. It may not be a 30-day cycle. I know it's likely not. But the potential of it double that is very high at this moment. So you're in on that little secret. I shouldn't be telling you that because it is top secret information. But 60-day cycle, 62-day cycle is a possibility. Now, 3 weeks from now, I might have a completely different tune as we learn a little bit more. But that's the first indication, first data that's coming in. And it's extremely important because that allows us to know when and where things will happen. That other guy again and these other forecasts that come out, they can spend an hour going, blah, blah this and blah, blah that about the PDO, the MJO, the AO, the NAO. They don't mention the LRC, Enzo, La Nina, El Nino. They mention all these things, but they don't know when and where something's going to happen. That's
fascinating. I'm very excited to keep discussing this over the next 3 weeks and be the first place that we get to talk about the new weather pattern being fully set up when that day does come here in just a few short weeks, we're going to be chatting about that. So very exciting time. Gary, as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for your intelligence, your thoughts, and sharing the LRC with us and kind of what's going on in the weather right now. To all of our listeners, I have every one of Gary's links linked down below. Whether you just love Gary's personality and you want to follow him on social media, or whether you want to get in on weather 2020, see what it's all about, I've got all of those links down below for you guys as well. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the CattleUSA Daily Podcast. Happy episode 200 to everyone listening. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you all tomorrow on another episode. Have a good one, y'all.